She grew up in a small, quiet home where dreams were rarely talked about. Life there was simple, sometimes heavy, and always practical. People around her believed in working hard, earning money, and staying realistic. Anything beyond that felt like a distraction. Dreams were seen as risky ideas, something people talked about when they had nothing serious to do. From a young age, she felt different. While others talked about jobs, grades, and exams, her heart was drawn to music. Not loud music. Not showy music. Just soft sounds that carried feeling. Sounds that made her feel calm when everything else felt confusing. Music made her feel understood in a way people never did. It felt like a place where she could breathe. She never announced her dream to anyone. She learned early that saying it out loud brought strange looks and gentle laughs. People would smile kindly and say things like, "It's good as a hobby," or "Music is nice, but it won't feed you." No one said these words with anger. That made it harder. Their doubt came wrapped in concern and advice is difficult to fight. If someone is cruel, you can resist. But when they sound caring, you begin to doubt yourself. So she kept her dream quiet. She practiced whenever she could. Sometimes early in the morning when the house was still asleep. Sometimes late at night when the world felt calmer. There was no special room for it. No fancy equipment. No audience. Just her, the instrument, and silence around her. The silence was loud at times. It reminded her that no one was watching. No one was waiting for her to succeed. Mistakes were common. Some days her hands felt heavy. Notes didn't come out right. Rhythms slipped away. On those days, frustration filled her chest. Other days, everything flowed and she felt proud of herself. But pride didn't last long. It was always followed by doubt. She wondered if her progress meant anything at all. Still, she kept going. Because stopping felt worse. At school and at family gatherings, she stayed quiet. She listened more than she spoke. When talent was discussed, people talked about others, never her. When performances happened, her name was never suggested. It wasn't that she was terrible. It was that no one expected anything from her. She had become invisible in a room full of people. She blended into the background so well that people forgot she was there. Sometimes even she forgot herself. Her confidence slowly began to shrink. Every ignored effort added weight to her chest. Every quiet practice session felt heavier than the last. She watched others chase their goals with support and encouragement while she carried hers alone. Sometimes she wondered if the people around her were right. Maybe she really was wasting time. Maybe she was holding on to something that didn't exist. The doubt didn't arrive all at once. It grew slowly, day by day, like a shadow following her everywhere. Only one person never questioned her efforts. Her mother wasn't a loud supporter. She didn't give long speeches or dramatic encouragement. She never told her daughter she would become famous or successful. But whenever she heard music coming from the room, she would quietly stop whatever she was doing and listen. She never interrupted. She never corrected. She never asked for more. She simply listened. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes her eyes filled with tears. She never explained. Life had not been kind to her mother. Years of responsibility had bent her shoulders and softened her voice. Worries lived quietly behind her eyes. Tiredness never fully left her face. She carried the weight of the family without complaint. Yet whenever her daughter played, something changed. Her face softened. Her breathing slowed. For a few minutes, the world felt lighter. Those moments mattered more than applause ever could, but the outside world didn't stop pushing back. Relatives suggested safer paths. Friends joked about dreams being unrealistic. Teachers focused on other students. Slowly, the voice of doubt grew louder than the sound of music. She began skipping practice. One missed session became two. Some days, she didn't touch the instrument at all. Guilt followed her everywhere. One evening, after a long day, she sat alone, staring at her hands. These hands had practiced for years, yet they felt useless. She wondered what all of it was for. No stage, no recognition. No clear future connected to music. Just endless effort with no visible reward. She thought about quitting. The thought scared her, but it also brought relief. No more explaining. No more hoping. No more quiet disappointment. She told herself that maybe it was time to be realistic, just like everyone said. Music could stay as a memory, something she once loved. That night, her mother noticed the silence. She gently asked why there was no music. The question was simple, but it hit deeply. Her daughter tried to smile and brush it off, saying she was tired. Her mother nodded, but her eyes showed concern. She placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and said nothing more. That silence felt heavier than words. Later that week, a small family gathering was planned. Nothing special, just relatives sitting together, talking, eating, filling the house with noise. Normally, she avoided these moments. Someone always asked uncomfortable questions about the future. Someone always compared lives. She planned to stay quiet. Like always, as the evening went on, someone noticed the instrument resting in the corner. A casual comment was made. She used to play a little, someone said without looking at her. The word used cut deeper than expected. Another person laughed softly and changed the topic. She felt heat rush to her face. Her hands trembled slightly. She wanted to disappear into the floor. In that moment, all her doubts returned at once. Her mother looked at her then. Their eyes met. There was no pressure in that look. No demand, no expectation. Just a gentle question without words. For the first time in a long while, her daughter felt truly seen, without fully deciding. She stood up. The room slowly quieted as people realized what was happening. Some looked surprised. Some looked curious. Others looked doubtful. No one expected much. She could feel it in the air. That old, familiar feeling of being underestimated wrapped around her again. She almost sat back down, but then she remembered the quiet mornings. The lonely nights. The hours spent practicing when no one cared. She remembered her mother listening from the doorway, never asking her to stop, never asking her to be more. Something inside her shifted. She wasn't doing this for them. She sat down, took a breath, and adjusted her hands. Her heart was pounding so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. Her fingers felt stiff at first, like they belonged to someone else. Fear tried to take over. Then she looked at her mother. Her mother was watching, fully present. Eyes soft, lips pressed together, holding emotion back. That look calmed her more than applause ever could. She began to play. At first, the sound was quiet, almost fragile. The room went still. Conversation stopped. Plates were forgotten. Slowly, the music grew stronger. Not louder, but deeper. Each note carried something real, years of silence, doubt, patience. And love. She forgot about the people watching. She played the way. She always did when she was alone, honest, unpolished, from the heart. The mistakes didn't matter. The feeling did. The music filled the space in a way words never could. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. She didn't wipe them away. She didn't look embarrassed. She listened as if the music was speaking directly to her. In that moment, everything her daughter had kept inside finally had a voice. The room felt different now. People leaned forward. Some exchanged glances. Doubt slowly faded into surprise, curiosity, and quiet respect. No one interrupted. No one laughed. She reached the final note and let it fade naturally. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that follows something meaningful. Her hands rested in her lap, shaking slightly. She didn't look up. She wasn't waiting for praise. She had already played for the one person who mattered. Her mother stood up. She didn't clap loudly. She didn't make a speech. She simply walked over and held her daughter's hands, tears still on her face. Her voice was soft, but clear enough to be heard. She said she was proud. Not because of the performance, but because of the courage it took to keep going when no one believed. Something changed in that room. People began clapping, slowly at first, then stronger. Some looked thoughtful. Some looked ashamed. The same people who had once dismissed her talent were seeing her differently now. Not because she had suddenly become talented, but because they had finally paid attention She felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Belief. Not loud confidence. Not excitement. Just a calm understanding that her effort mattered. That her voice mattered. That she wasn't invisible anymore. That night, as the gathering ended and the house grew quiet, she sat beside her mother. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. The music had already said everything. She didn't know what the future would look like. There were no guarantees. No sudden opportunities waiting outside the door. But for the first time, she wasn't thinking about quitting. She was thinking about continuing. And that made all the difference. After that evening, life didn't suddenly become exciting or dramatic. There were no big announcements, no sudden praise from everyone, and no magical change in her surroundings. The house looked the same. The streets sounded the same. People still talked the same way. But inside her, something had shifted quietly, and it stayed. It wasn't loud happiness or confidence. It was calm. It was steady. It was the feeling that she no longer needed permission to believe in herself. She woke up each morning with a lighter heart. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the heavy pressure of doubt sitting on her chest the moment she opened her eyes. That tight feeling, the one that used to remind her of everything she hadn't achieved, was weaker now. It didn't disappear completely, but it no longer controlled her. She began noticing small things about herself that she had ignored before. Her hands moved with more confidence when she practiced. They no longer hesitated at every mistake. When something went wrong, she didn't stop immediately or feel frustrated the way she used to. Instead, she paused, adjusted, and tried again. And then again. The fear of being judged, the fear that had once followed every note she played, slowly lost its grip. Her mother noticed the change too. She didn't mention it directly, but she watched closely. She saw how her daughter now picked up her instrument without hesitation, without that heavy sigh she used to make. She saw how practice had become intentional, not forced. Some evenings, her mother sat nearby, quietly listening, just like she always had. But now, there was pride in her eyes that she no longer tried to hide. It showed in the way she sat still, in the way she listened more carefully, in the way her face softened. People around them slowly began to see her differently. Not all at once, not loudly. It happened in pieces. Someone asked her mother if she had learned music formally. Someone else mentioned they didn't realize she had such control and emotion. These comments weren't dramatic or life-changing, but they mattered. They showed that people were finally paying attention, finally seeing what had always been there. Still, she stayed grounded. She remembered how quickly people had once dismissed her efforts. She didn't allow these new reactions to distract her or change her focus. She understood now that respect earned slowly was stronger than attention gained quickly. She didn't want praise if it meant losing herself. Her routine became more structured. She set aside specific time each day to practice, even on days when she felt tired or distracted. Some days were smooth. Notes flowed easily and she felt connected to the music. Other days were frustrating. Her fingers felt slow. Her mind wandered. There were moments when she felt stuck, like she wasn't improving at all. On those days, old doubts tried to return. A familiar voice inside her whispered that maybe this progress was temporary, but now she knew how to face that voice. She reminded herself of how close she had come to quitting. She remembered the empty feeling she had carried for years, the silence that hurt more than noise. And she remembered the look on her mother's face when she played from the heart. That memory stayed with her. It reminded her why she started and why she needed to continue. A few weeks later, a neighbor invited her to play at a small gathering. It wasn't anything special, just a few people sitting together in a simple room. The idea made her nervous. Playing for strangers felt different from playing for family. There was no shared history, no comfort. But she knew she couldn't keep hiding forever. On the day of the gathering, her hands shook again. The fear returned, familiar and uncomfortable, but it didn't control her. She took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was there. Not to impress anyone, not to prove anything, just to share something real. When she started playing, the room slowly fell quiet. Conversations stopped. People turned their attention toward her. She focused on the sound, letting the music guide her instead of her thoughts. She didn't think about how she looked or what people might say afterward. By the time she finished, she felt calm. Whatever reaction came next didn't matter as much as the fact that she had faced her fear and played anyway. After that, more small opportunities followed. Nothing dramatic. Nothing life-changing. Someone asked her to play again at another small event. Another person suggested she teach a child who wanted to learn. At first, she doubted herself. Teaching felt like a big responsibility. She wondered if she was ready. But she remembered how lonely her own journey had been, how she had learned mostly on her own. She didn't want anyone else to feel that kind of loneliness. Teaching changed her in unexpected ways. Explaining simple techniques made her understand them better herself. Watching someone struggle reminded her of her own early days. She became more patient, not just with others, but with herself. She learned that growth takes time and that mistakes are part of learning, not proof of failure. Not everyone supported her choices. Some people still believed she should focus on something more secure. They warned her not to get lost in dreams. She listened politely, but their words no longer cut deep. She had learned that not everyone would understand her path, and that was okay. She no longer needed approval from everyone. There were still hard days. Days when practice felt heavy. Days when progress seemed slow. Days when exhaustion made her question everything. On those days, she allowed herself to rest without guilt. She learned that rest was not weakness. It was part of staying strong, part of protecting the things she loved. One afternoon, she found her mother sitting quietly, looking tired. Life hadn't suddenly become easier for her mother. Responsibilities still weighed on her shoulders. Worries still existed. Without saying anything, her daughter sat beside her and began to play softly. There was no plan, no performance. Just gentle sound filling the space. Her mother closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. For a few moments, the world felt lighter. In that silence between notes, her daughter understood something deeply. Even if nothing more ever came from her music, this alone would have been enough. Music had already done its job. It had healed something unseen. As time passed, she grew stronger, not just as a musician, but as a person. She learned to trust her instincts. She learned to speak up when necessary. She learned that her voice mattered, even when it wasn't heard by everyone. People started asking her how she stayed motivated when no one believed in her at first. She never gave dramatic answers. She simply said that belief doesn't always come early. Sometimes it comes late. Sometimes it comes from just one person. And sometimes that is enough to keep going. She never chased fame. She never rushed success. She focused on consistency, learning, and honesty. Opportunities came slowly and naturally, built on effort rather than pressure. At night, when the house was quiet, she often thought about the moment she almost quit. The memory still scared her. But instead of regret, it filled her with gratitude. Gratitude for her mother's silent support. Gratitude for the courage she found when she needed it most. Her journey didn't turn into a miracle story. There were no headlines, no sudden rewards. What it became was something more real. A life shaped by patience, resilience, and quiet determination. And every time she sat down to play, she remembered that night. Not because the world finally listened, but because she finally believed that her voice mattered.